Hi, this is Scott Forstie, talking to you about what's new in DB2 for I. On this common webinar, you'll find out some of the things that we've been up to lately in the database. What are those features and functions that we've added or enhanced? Some of this will also be a prelude or an introduction to the sorts of information that you can get greater detail on if you join me in attending the 2017 Annual Common Meeting. It's May 7th through 10th in Orlando, Florida, and I highly encourage you to go to this event or to send some of your teammates to it. For anyone who does go, or if you send anyone to go, be sure to give them my name. Tell them to look me up at one of my many sessions and say hello, introduce themselves, tell me a little bit about the challenges that they meet day to day in the data center, and I will hopefully respond with some ideas that they can take home and to help improve operations, the oversight and management of the DB2 for I data, and anything else that I can hopefully help with. But by all means, meet me in Orlando, and let's have a great time at the next common annual meeting. With that, I'm going to take you through some of the enhancements that have been brought to the database and give you a little bit of information of the what and the why, and let you dig deeper on your own. So let's jump into the presentation. First and foremost, please understand that even though these enhancements are timed to occur when IBM I has a technology refresh, otherwise known as a TR, the database enhancements are delivered to you through a DB2 PTF group. Anyone who's responsible for the administration and maintenance of service on your IBM I should be focused on the DB2 PTF group levels SF99702 for 7.2 and SF99703 for 7.3. Now that level will indicate to you which enhancements are you positioned to use. And if you find ones of particular interest to you that you want to jump up and take advantage of, now you know which level to install. This timeline slide that's appearing in front of you is just a subset of the major enhancements delivered this year and last. All of the enhancements are documented on DeveloperWorks in that URL below at the bottom portion of the slide. You can go to that URL and see the sorts of information a technical person would want to know as far as explaining the technology. And there's even information about the DB2 PTF group levels per release. Where is it enabled? So please reference DeveloperWorks to understand the levels you need to be at to take advantage of some of these. Or stay current, and you don't have to worry about it so much, and stay current with DB2 for I service, and your team will have an ever-growing set of features and capabilities that they can leverage for a purpose. This particular topic today is something known as IBM i7.3 TR2 and IBM i7.2 TR6. There won't be a test on that. These are the TR levels that are becoming available for the database on March 31st. They were announced on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Announced means that there's an announcement letter, but it means far more than that. The announcement letter is a formal explanation of the enhancements, but it's typically brief. It's describing a little bit of the business value, but very few of the technical details. Where do you find more details? Well, I've already explained this. In DeveloperWorks, we're going to have information about all of the enhancements, database and beyond, and links to additional details. So you can drill down and into very quickly those topics you care most dearly about. We also enhanced and update IBM I Knowledge Center publications. Some are updated twice a year, like the SQL reference, for example, has a section about what's new, and if you go to that what's new section, you'll see for every technology refresh cycle, we have an overview of what are the enhancements to the SQL language, so that those using SQL to interact with the database can know what can they take advantage of. In either case, you can go to these landing page links to find the latest about what's new. We always have these landing pages just to make it, again, simple to know what's new to you, because you know how many TRs that maybe you just installed. So maybe you want to review more than just what I have in front of you. Maybe you want to review this one and the one previous to that. Very navigatable, if that's a word, via our DeveloperWorks Technology Updates Wiki. Now, if we had the pleasure of a short elevator ride, I might give you my quick elevator pitch about why should I care about what's going on in the database. And for me, it kind of starts and ends with efficiency and productivity. It's about the amount of time it takes you and your staff to get things done. Satisfy business requirements seems like a pretty important task, a heavy burden to some. We're trying to lighten the load continually in the database, give you improved capabilities to satisfy business requirements. Whether you're a database application developer or a system administrator or a security officer or a security administrator, whichever term you like to use, or even a database engineer, a DBE, formerly known as a database administrator, DBA. Any of those roles, there are new capabilities or enhanced capabilities for you. And I hope that they not only get consumed to make you kind of instantly a little bit more productive, but maybe they inspire some other enhancements to be embraced. Again, for a purpose, moving your business forward with the precious resources that you have. Okay, elevator doors opening, bing. Do you care to get off at this floor? I hope not, because there's a little bit more to tell you. First stop on our journey of talking about database enhancements coming out in March of 2017 is JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. This is our latest step in adding in integrated into the database JSON support. We're adding in what's known as JSON predicates that you can use on queries. And I'll show you a little bit more about that. Previously, we gave you JSON table, has the parentheses at the end of it. What does that mean? That means that's a user-defined table function. You query it just slightly different. What it does is deconstruct JSON key value pairs into relational data, allowing you to treat it like relational data. And even earlier than that, we provided something known as the DB2 JSON store, which allows you to store JSON documents, otherwise known as collections, JSON land, in a DB2 for I table. So it can participate in your highly available solution, your disaster recovery infrastructure, and you know that you can trust DB2 with this important information. So all three of those enhancements are available, the new one, of course, becoming available at the end of March. Let's take a closer look at what that new enhancement can give you. But first, I need to point out, since I last spoke to you, we published an article. One of the things I frequently hear from clients and partners is there's a need to have better and relevant examples and maybe a shallow or medium deep dive into a specific technology, explaining more than the SQL reference would tell you, which is basically the rules of the road. What is the syntax and what is it supposed to do? But maybe more from a business perspective, or even combining technologies. So in this example, we did just that. We've written an article the powerful JSON table function, please go give it a read. It would probably answer some of the questions that are foremost in your mind, like most good articles intend to do. So please take a look at that one, see what you already can use and how to use it. The JSON predicates, there are two of them. First, we'll start with something known as is JSON. Now, you can say is or is not JSON, and this predicate is going to determine whether a value in the JSON format is there or not. So in this example, we're going to use a trigger. We're gonna establish a trigger over our database table for a column that the column name is JSON underscore data, and we want to make sure that we do not insert invalid JSON documents into the database. Seems like a good business control. But let's know right away that something is invalid in how we're constructing our JSON. Well, with is and is not JSON, we can know whether it is a valid JSON object. And we've given you a working trigger program to illustrate this point. The other query predicate is something known as JSON exists. Now, previous predicate said, okay, the entire document is a valid formed JSON document. Whereas JSON exists takes a slightly different approach to it. It says, well, I'm not trying to discern whether this is a valid document or not. I want to interrogate a portion of the document. And in this case, I want to know whether we've supplied values for the value pair. So let's consider a human resources example. Everybody's familiar with the employee table. Let's explore or mine the employee table and find those instances where employees have not given us an emergency contact. Because part of our business rule is we need to have at minimum one emergency contact. And the query, you can see, is really not that complicated. Like the previous example, you're going to code this on your where clause. That's what a predicate means. And you're going to have the ability to decipher where the value exists within a JSON document. You get to give us a path expression, and you get to tell us what do we do when we find an error being the lack of a value. So that's it. 2 enhancements to JSON. Take us quickly back to our timeline. 2 enhancements to those already embracing JSON table and JSON store. Now you can establish some business logic along the way. I've left room on the slide for future enhancements to JSON. That is intentional. The SQL standards body is embracing JSON in the database for the SQL standard. And as you probably are well aware, we have a very good track record of adhering to and following what the SQL standard is deemed important. And we will continue to do so. So watch the space. Maybe in future meetings we'll discuss things to the right. Let's continue the exploration of those things that are new or enhanced for the database application developer. The next is some built-in functions. One brand new one, one enhanced. The new built-in function is known as list egg, and it aggregates a set of values in creating a list. Now, like most built-ins, you can point it to many different things. In this case, I give you an example where we are again working with this notion of an employee table, and we want to take the surnames or the last names of all the employees for each department and create a list. We want to have the list delimited. In this case, it's going to have comma separators between each name. And at the end result, we're going to get more than one row returned. Each row will be a unique instance of work department, and then a list, an ordered list of the last names of the employees who are in that department. Okay, well that's not tough conceptually, but how did you do that in the past? How you conquered this little task in the past was you wrote more code. Now you don't have to. You could still choose to write more code, but now you don't have to. So start to turn over some of those tasks to the database. That is conceptually known as data-centric. You give the database as much of the task as possible in one trip to the database. You'll be better off in many ways. LTrim and RTrim. You've had this for a very long time. It trims blanks from the left or trims blanks from the right. Wait a second, now it does a lot more. Now you get to decide which characters are trimmed. In my example, I'm showing you it's a currency example, and we know that we have maybe not so perfectly formed data in this column. We can transform it using SQL and LTrim. So in the example, we're showing the second parameter, which is now optional. You give a trim expression. The trim expression is a sequence of characters. We see a $sign and a blank. In this case, we have 2 characters. LTrim is then going to be directed to start from the leftmost part of that string and proceed to throw away characters until it encounters a character that is not in the trim expression. So you see, trim a blank, trim a blank, trim the $sign, trim yet another blank. Encounter the number 1. The number 1 is not in my trim expression. I'm done. Here's your value. So there's lots of applications for this, for cleansing and transforming data into the final and consistent form that you'd like to see it. Other application enhancements. RPG, we continue to work very closely with Barbara Morris on our RPG support, not only proper, but also for the SQL programmer. And the first enhancement is, I'm happy to report that Barbara's RPG enhancements are now, those PTFs are now included in the DB2 PTF groups. Hooray! If you followed my advice of staying current on your DB2 PTF group levels, you are also staying current on your RPG compiler support. One last thing to keep track of. Barbara also asked us to join her in an improvement for nested data structures, and we did that. So want to know more about the nested data structure support? Check out Barbara's RPG Cafe, and you'll see more about it. But rest assured, the database precompilers, SQL precompilers for RPG has also been enhanced. The SQL programming enhancements don't stop there. We also made yet another enhancement to those people using 3-part names. 3-part name support allows you to reach out and interact with the remote database quite easily. We removed the restriction of using 3-part names from triggers. So now your trigger programs can utilize this capability to, again, do external action type events, reach out, pulling data or pushing data from a trigger, and you can do it. Ease of use is there. We've taken another step with our HTTP functions. So now there's a little bit more capability for the user, for the application developer of HTTP functions. If they encounter failure, they're going to get more detail back when they're using the verbose functions, so they'll be better positioned to kind of debug their own loss of service if they were to encounter some sort of failure. And, you know, advice is a curious thing. People who give advice but never follow their own advice are not in the best position. So we didn't want to be caught in that conundrum. And what are we telling clients? We're telling clients, hey, you can use free format support for RPG. Make your RPG pleasant to look at and for others to understand and use. We do the same thing now. It's not across the board, but in many places where you hand us an embedded SQL statement in RPG, Precompiler is going to generate free format style RPG code. We're taking our own advice. Database engineers. There's something for you here. The first is something that you don't directly consume. You don't have to do anything to enable other than install the database PTF group level. It's known as an index advisor. We've discovered a way that we can improve the efficiency in how we manage it. So this is good for your overall system impact of having index advice occurring. So another benefit of just moving up to the latest levels. We also have a great many improved Access Client Solutions features. I'm going to save those until the ending portion of this presentation, so stay tuned. And we continue to push out different architectural limits. I'm sure this limit is not going to be that exciting to many people, but it's illustrative of us in the database keeping track of those things that we see client applications and users needing in many years into the future, and making those enhancements for more complex and extended SQL. Now we're going to shift into something known as IBM I services. IBM I services are database constructs. They're usually views, or in some cases user-defined table functions, or in even other cases procedures that you can call or program to that let you interact with an operating part of the IBM I operating system. So alternatives to tried and true CL commands and APIs. First one we have for you is something new called message queue info. Message queue info is going to allow you to extract detail or messages from a message queue. What do you do with that information? Well, you need to be creative, people. You need to think of those things that really could benefit if you were to automate them or study them using an optimizer that can order, group, select, and transform into something useful. I like to give you examples. Maybe they're not the best examples, but they're a starter set. First example is using SQL to examine all inquiry messages and their responses or replies. Now we can use SQL to just go out there, find all those inquiry messages, and match up the message to the response that was given, and know who gave the response, when did they give the response, and what was their response. Are you doing this today? You could be doing this right now. Right? You could follow my query here and deploy this enhancement in your installation. So I had to think of good questions to ask. Does anyone care if I IPL? Oh, no problem. Go for it. Okay, it's not a production box, so don't worry. Does everyone love Minnesota winters? The reply was, of course. It's sad for me to tell you this, but living in Minnesota, I've come to discover not everyone does love a Minnesota winter. It's just shocking to me because it's a glorious time of year and it should be embraced. But nonetheless, not everybody likes it or loves it. With that, let's go on to our next service. It's actually more than one service, and they're all focused on security management. We've made a significant step forward with our SQL service capabilities for managing security. We have now authorization list support, both a list of those objects that pertain to an authorization list and the user authorization for the authorization list. We didn't stop there. We also invented something called object privileges, which is the SQL version of display object authority. You can see all the authority, both public and private, for any object. Now, this is a bit of a preview or another reason to join me in Orlando in May. I'm going to unveil a brand new session. It's called SQL for the Security Administrator. Some of what I'll show you are things that you can do today, because they've been around for quite a while, but maybe you haven't seen some of the examples I can cook up. Some of them will show you things that became available on that March 31st when that PTF group comes out. So come to the session and you'll see more. You'll see I'm going to not only take you through examples of all these different things and how to utilize them. I've structured this session so that it's a learning session of SQL as well. Because I know in this space maybe you traditionally have not spent a lot of time learning SQL. I'm going to try to make it easy to onboard you. I'm giving you different approaches to using SQL and explaining why that approach was used and showing you that it's really not that hard. So that's enough of a preview for that upcoming session. Monday, May the 8th. I'm looking forward to that. Let's fill the room. Let's make that room so full they say, well, wait, we need to repeat this session. That's what I'm hoping for. Come make my dreams come true. The enhancements don't end there, though. Another security-related enhancement, user info. This is the SQL version of display user profile. 2 new columns for managing supplemental group membership. Not too difficult a concept, but very valuable if you're auditing your security detail. We also have improvements for license management. I've come to understand a bit about licensing, enough that I know that I want to remain working on database. It is somewhat beyond me, to be honest. Licensing of those features and functions that you have is not only complex to me, but it's pretty important, right? You want to know what you're paying for, and you want to make sure that you don't have any unnecessary disruption of service. So we're going to do a little bit to help you here. We've added in a column to license info telling you whether this license pertains to a licensed product that's actually installed. You know, is that feature installed, yes or no? Okay, that means something different to me if it says yes or no. While we were adding that column, we decided to add a new procedure into SysTools. SysTools is where we show IBM provided tools and examples. This tool is called license expiration check, and you pass it in a single parameter. The diagram below it shows that it's actually the kind of parameter that has a default value. So you can even call this procedure and not even specify any parameters. If you do that, of course, you're going to get the value that we chose for the default. Well, what is this parameter all about? On this procedure, you pass in the number of days prior to a license expiring that you want to check. So, for example, let's say I always want to have my team notified if a license is going to expire within the next 30 days, or 45 days, or 10 days, or 70 days. I could list a lot of numbers, but I won't. Use this tool, and when something actually becomes in that window of expiration duration that you've chosen, we will send a message to QSysApper. And then that message will get consumed by whatever you use to manage messages on QSysApper, and your team will have all the detail they need to know to be proactive about their license management. Cards and letters, let me know what you think of any of these. Another service, this one's for the database engineer, and I hopefully kiddingly called it the database engineer's best friend, is a procedure called reset table index statistics. You might say only a database engineer would love that name. It's actually descriptive of what this does. This procedure, you call it, and you pass in the library and name of the table that you want us to go discover the indexes over that so that we can reset the SQE query use count and so that you can do an iterative process of making changes to your index strategy and know the true impact of that. We've had this procedure for a while. What we did was we added in a third parameter to it. That allows you to tell us, and I also want you to, the database that is, to remove any relevant index advice from the index advice table. So if you're going to reset the counts, you probably want to throw away the index advice because you don't want it clouding your next cycle of analysis, your next iteration of a study. So use this procedure and that should help you along the way. Like I mentioned before, here's kind of a summary page. These new services, this is like the full list of the security ones. The and more, well, I've shown you all of them. There aren't any more than that, other than perhaps there are some that we added in previous cycles that you didn't realize were there. It's a very common occurrence when I talk to somebody about something new, and then I say, well, certainly you've heard of some other service that we've had, and then they say usually yes or no, some cases, and then it becomes a pleasant conversation about doing some additional things. Come to a comment and I'll have several sessions on these services. Now we're going to shift our focus into IBM i Access Client Solutions, ACS. ACS has been around for a good while. For like the last year and a half, it's been really a focus area for enhancements for the database user. And Tim Rowe, Jesse Gorzinski, and team do an outstanding job on ACS. So applause. If I had it, I would cue it. I'm a very fortunate person. I get to work directly with these two brilliant guys, and they allow me to help guide and influence and even test in some cases what should ACS be for the database user. And in this latest delivery, 1.1.7.0, delivered sometime in March. I'm not putting the exact date on here, but you know that's not too far away if you're at the time of this recording. We have enhancements ranging from run SQL Scripts enhancements. Anybody doing kind of, you could think of interactive SQL. Interactive SQL that doesn't have a green screen is much better for you. So please lay off the green unless it's some of those healthy vegetables and be using ACS for your interactive SQL. CL prompting, I'll show you in a second. Enhanced SQL highlighting allows you to more easily debug the SQL that you're trying to execute. Show object references gives you insight into what the parser thinks of your SQL. No, our parser is not going to criticize your SQL. It's going to show you what objects and columns does your SQL reference so that you can understand the true impact of your SQL. Maybe do better impact analysis. Upload results allows you to take the results of an SQL query and save it to a DB2 file of your choice. So we're calling it upload. You could call it save as DB2 file. And more insert from examples. All those services I mentioned previously and other things, we build in working examples into this tool to make it easier for clients to leverage both the new capabilities and get things done in SQL. ACS also has two new styles of filtering improvements, both for printer output, being able to use the outstanding printer output capabilities in ACS to find the output for multiple users, 2 to n. IFS filtering, well, IFS is a way to kind of ACS navigation of the IFS. Now that same filtering kind of concept comes into play, and you can limit what's showing up in your screen, make it easier to work with the tool to get something done. And if that were not enough, we have a major enhancement called schemas. You can see major enhancements typically, but not always, get added to the highest level of ACS. And in this case, the database quadrant, if you will, got a new action called schemas. Schemas is going to let you navigate through your SQL schemas, also known as libraries, and interact with database objects. But first, run SQL Scripts. This one almost always gets a wow because people didn't realize we had this capability. Both you can interlace commands in with SQL statements within run SQL Scripts. You just prefix it with CL colon. Put the command and then semicolon after. But what if you don't remember the exact command string? Just type in the command name, and if you have your cursor anywhere within between the C and the semicolon, press the key F4, and you will see the dialog appear for that command. You'll be prompting it, and then you can interact with that graphical interface just like you would on the green screen. And when you click on OK, it's going to drop the whatever command string you generated into run SQL Scripts. This is good stuff. So even if you need to use commands, you have no excuse. You need to stay in ACS. Schema support. Here's the major enhancement. So major I don't have even all the detail on here. The paint's not dry on this slide even. We're still finishing up a few touches, but it'll be done very soon here. You can see I did show a couple things in here. First, you can have any number of schemas on the left that you add, and then when you expand them, you get to decide, do I want to look at all my objects, or is there a specific type of database object that I want to work with? So it's very common to go by database type, because usually you have a specific task you're trying to accomplish. Like we talked about indexes already, maybe you want to interact with the indexes. So then you'd go into the index choice. In this example, I'm showing tables. Right? The tables are the physical files containing the data, containing your data. From there, you find the table of interest, and you have lots and lots of options. The one I've highlighted is Generate SQL. Give me back the perfect SQL that would form one of those tables. Not with the data in it, but just the construct of it. But that's not the only one. Of course, there's a long list of them working with data, forming a new database object, looking at the definition and description. Those are very common. And the idea, the hope we have here is that we're building in as many features as possible into this Java-based Access Client Solutions tool that you'll be able to use it and not have to go elsewhere. We're not done yet. I know it. So you don't have to send me that card or letter, but the team has made great strides here into building out the tool for the database user. So definitely, if you haven't used it before, use it. If you have used it, get the update. Now, with that, it looks like I have gone over my slide here. Let me point out, for Access Client Solutions, one more promo for Orlando. Sorry, hang in there, folks. We're almost done. Timbro, myself, and Wayne Bowers, another expert in ACS, will all be at Lowe's Resort in Orlando talking about ACS and many other topics. So even though I have given you a preview of what's in ACS, you really should come to the meeting, because from that meeting you're going to find out information about deployment and configuration, authorization, extended use cases. You're going to get a lot more detail about using ACS for database topics, for IFS and interrogation principle. And we haven't even started scratching the surface on the 5250 emulator, right? The ACS emulator is better than any other emulator, and there's a whole session usually devoted to that. So that's what's going on in ACS. This is a check-in point from yours truly. More enhancements are already in flight, if you will, come to the meeting in May, and you might just learn something more. With that, I will sign off now. I thank you very much for joining this session for Common, and